PSP is here.
Hey there Retro Games fans, this is Andy C from Piece of 8-Bit. Welcome to this week's video, and this week I will be talking about this. The humble PSP, which is celebrating 20 years, certainly in Europe this year, and I'll tell you a little bit about my experience with picking this up back in the day. Yeah, ultimately today's video is all about month with, and in my month with videos what I basically do is pick a device and I live with it for a whole month and then report back to you lovely people and tell you what it's been like. I'll also tell you a little bit about the history of the device, I'll tell you a little bit about the hardware specifications, what sort of games I've been playing, and how you can get back into PSP gaming in 2025. And of course, I'll be telling you what it's been like and whether you should actually go back and have another look. Is it really as good as it used to be and as you remember it? So all of that coming up in this video. And of course, at the end of the video, stick with it. I will be telling you all about what's coming up next month, or well, it's this month now. It's coming up through September, and I'm pretty sure you won't guess it. It is, just to get a little bit of a clue, it is also something that's celebrating an anniversary this year. So that's a bit of a clue for you, but all will be revealed at the end. If you want to skip through, obviously use the chapters. You don't feel the need to watch all of it. There's a lot of content in the video, so please do skip through the chapters if you want to just go and have a look at specific bits. And obviously, if you enjoy these videos, please do hit that like and subscribe button. I love making the month with series videos, and I'm going to be sad because one day I'm going to run out of consoles to do. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But without any further ado, let's get stuck straight in with the history of the PSP, and I'll tell you all about how it came to be, and we'll go from there. I'll see you on the other side. Right then, so let's just talk a little bit about how the PSP came to be and a little bit of the history of the device. So if you look behind me here, you can see I've got a selection of handheld devices. So if we go right back here, we've got Mario Brothers. This is a Game & Watch. This is from the very, very early 80s. And this ultimately really was the first kind of handheld type of a game that you got, these little LCD games, which I absolutely loved. Picked this one up quite recently, actually, in these wonderful Nintendo sort of red wine colorings. Really great little thing. And we've got loads of other devices here. So we've got our Game Gear, which is also featured in the month with some time ago. So we've got the Game Gear there. That's Sega. And we've got the future here as well, a little bit of the future. So we've got our, well, obviously the past now, but to the PSP, the future, our 3DS, and obviously the PS Vita. But if you look at a lot of these devices, you'll see we've got the 3DS, we have the Game Boy, of which I've got another couple of variants of that. Obviously this is the classic. This really was the first very successful handheld game, you know, aside from the Game & Watch, but certainly the first game that you could put the cartridge in and play like a console. You've got the Game Boy Advance SP, obviously, and the Game Boy Advance, which came before it. And you've got here, this is my DSi. So this is a DSi, this is the Nintendo DS, but this is the DSi XL version, which I also just picked up, also in very, very similar colours. Those sort of purple colours, that red wine colour that you see on the Famicom, the Japanese version of the NES, of course. But what you'll notice here is that a lot of these devices have the same company producing them, and that company, of course, is Nintendo. So Nintendo really were the masters right the way from the early 80s through the 80s, all the way up to sort of the modern era. And obviously, what I don't even have here, of course, is the Nintendo Switch. I do have it now. Also, well, nearly the same colour. All of these devices, all of these handheld devices, a lot of these handheld devices were Nintendo. We had the Sega, but Sega only really made a brief appearance on the portable market. And so really Sony wanted a little bit of taste of the gig, right? So if you think the Nintendo DS sold 150 million units, second only to Sony's PlayStation 2, and Sony thought to themselves, we want a piece of the action on that. We know how to sell consoles. We've sold the PS1 and we've sold the PS2, the most successful console of all time. We went in on this handheld lark. So that is what happened. And we were very fortunate to get the PSP, which is a fantastic device. Now, this came out in 2004 in Japan, and the reason it's celebrating an anniversary this year is because in Europe it's celebrating 20 years. It came out in 2005, and I actually queued up for my PSP It's the only time I've ever gone to a midnight launch of anything. I was traveling and I decided that I wanted to take the PSP, and it came out the day before we were traveling, and so I went down to Game at midnight to pick up my version of the game, sorry, not the Game Boy, of the PSP. I traded in my GameCube to get it, so I traded in my GameCube and all my games, which to this day I probably do regret a little bit. But yeah, I got my PSP and I was very, very happy with it, and I took it on my holidays to Italy with me, and I was probably quite unsociable for 2 weeks. Fantastic device. Sony really wanted something that was a little bit more premium, so they were really looking at creating a premium product, and Ken Kutaragi, who was the SCE president at the time, launched this at E3 2003 and said, we want this to be the Walkman of the 21st century, which is a really bold statement, but ultimately, it's Sony. They own the Walkman, they own the PSP, they thought they could do it, and you know what? They did pretty well. They sold 80 million copies of this. Now, yes, I hear you saying it's not 150 million, which is what the DS sold. The DS just was a phenomenon, an absolute phenomenon. Continued to be a phenomenon really until the Switch came out. We had the 3DS and lots of variants of the DS. So it really was going to be very, very difficult to match that. But for Sony's first attempt, 80 million is a good amount of consoles sold, and is still one of the sort of best-selling consoles of all time, and certainly one of the best handheld selling consoles of all time. Obviously, the Vita came later, and the Vita unfortunately didn't sell anything like as well, and it's a real shame because this is a really, really nice unit. I love the Vita, but it was just Sony just didn't market it properly, and there was a lot of gimmicks on it, and there was a lot of problems with titles and all of those kind of things. That's a different topic for a different day. But as you can see as well, they definitely have ancestry. You can see the two devices, obviously very, very similar in terms of how they look, very sleek. Love this shiny sort of gloss finish that they have. Absolutely fantastic. And the PSP really did set the scene for this sort of gaming type platform for the future. If you think about systems like the Switch, but also things like the Steam Deck that came after it, obviously the PS Vita, a lot of handheld consoles that came after this kind of really do have their roots in the humble PSP. So we did see quite a few variants of this. This is the PSP 3000, which is the third variant of it, and it come without slightly less complex loading bay for your UMD, slightly improved colours. It had interlacing on it. The PSP 1000, obviously, which was the original one, was quite bulky. That's the one I had, obviously, and I did actually buy myself another one of those recently, but it was a little bit scuffed and a bit scratched up, and I actually found one of these for sale and actually traded that one in to buy the 3000. The 3000 and the 2000, the 2000 is the second model, allowed you to also plug in a TV out, so you could plug them into the television, which for most people wasn't really that useful, but for me it is quite handy because obviously I can record off it. And if you watched my video the other week about getting into emulation, I obviously showed that on the screen quite a bit, which was really helpful for me. So yes, a really inspirational little device, sold a lot of copies. And yes, I was talking about variants, wasn't I? We had two more variants after the 3000. So we also had another one called the PSP Go, which didn't sell all too well. It didn't come with the UMD in the back. It was entirely digital device, so you need to download all the games from the store. People were a little bit cold to that at the time. And we also had something called the PSP Street, which I think is called the E1000, I think is its code name, but it's called the PSP Street, which was the last one that came out in 2011. That was the last PSP to come out. It had more of a matte finish to it, and it was a little bit cheaper as well. I think it was Sony's sort of last-ditch attempt to kind of get a few more of these sold. So yeah, so between 2005 and 2011, we had those 5 revisions. The 2000 in 07, we had the 3000 in 08, so this one is, well, I guess 17 years old now, I suppose. And the Go in 09 and the Street in 2011. So there you go. It launched with some fantastic titles as well, which is always helpful for a console when you get some good titles launching. So we had Lumines, which you can see in one of my earlier videos from in the month. Ridge Racer and Wipeout Pure, so some really big titles on this platform as it came out. So really was all about ambition and practicality. That was what Sony were going for, and I really do think they achieved that. So let's talk now a little bit about some of the hardware specifications of this little powerhouse, and yeah, and then we'll talk a little bit more about some of the games I've been playing. See you there. Alright, let's talk a little bit about the hardware specs of the PSP, sometimes referred to as the PS 2.5. It was a very powerful machine in a compact device. It was capable of playing pretty much anything the PS2 could do. The PSP could generally do it as well, which is what we saw with Liberty City and Vice City Stories, for instance. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the hardware here. So there are 3 main variants plus 2 sort of side variants, if you like. We spoke about it in the previous section. So we've got the 1000, the 2000, the 3000, the Go and the Street. So we'll talk about them in order because their hardware specifications do vary somewhat. But ultimately, some of the things that are the same, ultimately in the 1000, the 2000 and the 3000, the standard PSPs and the Street, they all had the 4.3-inch screen. It varied, and I'll talk to you a little bit about the differences as we go through. But they all ran a MIPS R4000 CPU, which is running at 333 megahertz, although this was actually capped early doors to 222 megahertz, just to spare the battery, essentially. The PSP 1000 then came with 32 megabytes of RAM. It came with that 4.3-inch TFT LCD screen, which was capable of resolution of 480 by 272. It came with the UMD, which is essentially one of these little optical discs, which I will show you here. Little optical disc. Sony really wanted this to be sort of a micro mini format for optical discs going forward, but it only ever appeared in the PSP and nowhere else. They were a little brittle, so the little plastic cover on here can break at times or get crushed in and stop the disc spinning properly. I like them. I think they're a nice little format, but yeah, they're not great. They're meant to be, you know, a little bit more protected because they're in their own sort of little case here and everything else like that. Yeah, they weren't fantastic, and obviously limited on size as well. They did actually do movies. You could buy movies for your PSP, but they never really caught on. If you fancy giving it a go, you can usually pick the movies up for like 50p from your local CEX store, or you're anybody who sells retro stuff. You can generally find UMD videos knocking about as well if you want to. It's not really much point, to be honest with you. People just stuck with DVD. It also came with Memory Stick Pro Duo, which was sort of quite a similar format to SD cards. We'll talk when we come to PS Vita one day about the issue with the Memory Pro Stick Duo 2, but that's a different story for another day as well. It came with an 1800 milliamp hour battery, which was pretty decent actually. It was capable of good more than 2 hours of gaming, I would say. You know, obviously it depended on the intensity of the gaming and how much you were spinning up the UMD drive as well, because obviously it was a motorized disk drive. But generally, it was a pretty good battery life. If we move to the PSP 2000, so a really big jump. So this came a couple of years after the launch and of the PSP 1000, and it did see quite a lot of improvement. So most notably, it was 64 meg of memory as opposed to 32 on the 1000. But it was the important thing really was it was 33% lighter. It was a lot lighter, definitely a lot lighter, and nearly a fifth slimmer, so 19% slimmer, and it was actually called the PSP Slim and Light when it came out. It also introduced the concept of TV out, which I mentioned before, and it actually came with a smaller battery, so it came with a 1200 milliamp hour battery. Obviously a lot of that weight saving would have been from the smaller battery, but as the device was a lot more efficient, essentially that just meant that you know, that we didn't really see a lot of difference, just a lot lighter. Also introduced the concept of USB charging as well, so as USB was really starting to take hold by this point, and was pretty much everywhere. It also supported USB charging. So that was the 2000. The 3000, which is the version I've got somewhere. Where's it gone? Here it is. The 3000, which is the version I've got. Just saw a few sort of minor tweaks, really. It did have a better screen. So it had a better color gambit, and it also had a brighter TFT screen. It had a built-in microphone for Skype chat and things like that as well, if you wanted to do a bit of online gaming or you wanted to chat on it. It also had that online. It's also had that built-in microphone as well. Although I don't know anybody that really made any good use of it. But apart from that, it's pretty much very, very similar to the 2000. Very sleek, shiny little device. I do like the 3000. 2000 arguably is the better device, typically. Then we had the PSP Go, and this was Sony's attempt to try and move away from the optical storage format, and so it was a smaller device, much smaller device, and obviously without the need to have the motor and the disk drive in it, it was a lot lighter, and it came in at only 158 grams. It also had a smaller screen, so it's a 3.8 inch screen, and it came with 16 gigabytes of internal storage, so you could store all those games that you were downloading. But it didn't really catch on. I think people didn't like the idea of the whole digital thing, and also people found the buttons a little bit cramped on it as well. So it didn't sell particularly well, and to the point where it's actually quite a rare find, and the PSP Go actually fetches quite a pretty packet. It's a lot more expensive than buying a classic sort of standard PSP if you're looking for a second-hand one. And then in 2011, Sony did the PSP Street, which was only sold in Europe, and it was a really cut down version. It had the same 4.3 inch screen that the other PSPs had, but it wasn't as bright. It was just a little bit, generally just a lot cheaper. They sort of made quite a lot of compromises so that they could sell the device. Essentially, it was a budget PSP. But there you go, that is the hardware specifications of all the different variants that there were. But there were a bunch of things you could also get. I mentioned about the TV out, so you could get yourself the proprietary TV out cable for it, and lots of nice little accessories. Something I picked up recently, the official Sony carry case, which I think it's probably one of the better carrying cases. So you've got lots of space for your UMDs in here, and there's a little sort of compartment in the top for your charging lead, and then the PSP actually slots in the side here. There's a little sort of protected area in the side of the device here, the case here as well. So quite a nice little extra accessory, and there's lots and lots of little sort of carry cases and things that you can buy for the PSP as well. But it didn't have loads and loads of sort of accessories to it. Obviously all the controllers and everything else are all built in, so there was no need for any of that. Yeah, I think that's probably all there is to say about the hardware. So let's now have a little talk about some of the games that I have been playing over the last 4 weeks. So for those of you who watch my Month With series, you know I'm going to say the same thing, and that thing is the games make the console, and they really do, and especially on the PSP, that is absolutely true. So what have I been playing this month? Well, a significant chunk of this month has been taken up with the wondrous Grand Theft Auto games that are Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories and Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories. So please do go and check out my video of those, GTA on the Go, and I will tell you all about what it was like to go and revisit those games. They're both based on their original PS2 counterparts. So the Vice City Stories is based on GTA 3, and Vice City Stories is based on, unsurprisingly, on Vice City. They're both prequels to those titles, but they're set in exactly the same cities as their original counterparts, and they are an absolute dream to play. There's new characters, there's lots of crossover to, there's lots of lead-in and crossover to the games, the sequels that came first. I hate it when things like that happen. They are fantastic. So new characters, new stories, but familiar maps and some other familiar characters in there as well. Both got great music, those fantastic radio stations, all of those things. They're just absolutely a dream to play, and I really did enjoy them. So when I was traveling with the PSP at the beginning of the month, I did spend a lot of time playing on those games, which meant that I didn't play as many games as I would have really liked to have done over the last 4 weeks. So I'm going to be doing a little bit more gaming as well. At the very beginning of the month, I also talked about some of the block puzzles. So I did a bit of the Battle of the Blocks, and one of my favourite block puzzle games is Lumines. So I played a lot of Lumines, and that game is hideously addictive. It is absolutely fantastic, and if you've never played it before, well, maybe don't, actually, because it will drain your life. It is the most addictive game ever, and I can just play it for hours without even realising it. It's fantastic. I love it. So I played a lot of Lumines, a really, really great game, and a launch title on the PS PSP, and definitely a great entry into that block puzzle genre. So that was a really good one. Also been playing some racing games, so played quite a bit of Burnout Dominator, which is a fantastic entry in the Burnout series. I don't think there is a bad Burnout game, not one that I'm aware of anyway. Played a bit of Burnout Dominator and also a little bit of Wipeout Pure because it's a PlayStation, so you've got to play a bit of Wipeout, haven't you? Surely that's got to be a thing. So yeah, really enjoyed both of those titles. Fantastic fun. And I think Ridge Racer, which is another racing title which came out pretty early on in the PlayStation life cycle, in fact I'm pretty sure that I bought it on launch, is Ridge Racer on the PSP, and that is a fantastic entry in the Ridge Racer series, if you ask me. It's really good. And we also had some others as well. I've not played a lot of them this month. I did play a bit of Driver. There is Driver 76. I don't know if I've got it behind me. I haven't. There's Driver 76, which is really good on the PSP. I played that early on in the month. Very similar sort of vibe to Grand Theft Auto, and Sega Rally is also very good as well on the PSP. So yeah, that's probably the main games that I've been playing. Some fantastic titles in there. There's also Jack and Daxter. I played a very small amount of that. It's actually just called Daxter. I think Jack and Daxter Precursor Legacy is on the PSP as well, which I think I played back in the day, but I haven't played it this time around as well. So some fantastic titles in there, and some that I haven't even got round to playing yet. So we've got Gran Turismo, which is a really good version of Gran Turismo. I haven't played it this time around, played it back in the day. Fantastic entry in the Gran Turismo series, especially for a portable device. It's actually really quite impressive. I'm just having a look around behind me here. Which other ones have I bought in? I've got another pile of games in the living room which I've still out there and I haven't bought them in. And then there were some really unusual games, and I unfortunately haven't been able to find the goggles, but there was Metal Gear Acid, which I really enjoyed back in the day, and I did have a bit of a look at it, but you can't really play it without the goggles. It comes with these sort of little 3D goggles things, and it's like a turn-based strategy card game. It's a really unusual game, but it's actually really good. I really enjoyed it when it came out. Yeah, I haven't been able to find a good copy of that with the little goggles that you put over the top of the PSP. But yeah, maybe I need to go and have another look. Maybe you can play it without them. I don't know. I haven't given it a good shot. So yes, fantastic whole bunch of games to play, and of course I also had a go at doing some homebrew, and if you go and watch my homebrew video, it'll tell you all about getting back into homebrew. Homebrew is a big thing for the PSP. Sony tried to shut it down on every release that they did, but someone would always come back and work out how to get the homebrew working again on your PSP, and it became more and more involved. And if you go and watch my homebrew video, it'll tell you how to do homebrew in 2025. It's actually now very easy to do. But at the time, people were just constantly playing catch up. And in fact, Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories, which I do have here, this game was in fact one of the games that you needed for one of the early exploits. It was to do with the way that the game saves worked on it, and it would actually help you to get the homebrew working. And so you could play anything. Once you got homebrew working, you could pretty much play anything. And I played the whole of Sam & Max Hit the Road on, which is a which is a point and click type adventure from LucasArts. A game I really loved in the 90s, and it actually rendered really well through the Scum VM engine on the homebrew setup on the PSP back in the day. So got to do lots of things like that, and so yeah, I've been doing a bit of homebrew playing as well, although mostly just some of the classic games, and there just hasn't been enough time. There just has not been enough time, so I really do want to go back and spend quite a bit more time with the PSP, and I say that about every console every month because I just run out of time. A month is just not enough. So there you go, that's just some of the games that I've been playing. I'm just going to in the next section talk to you a little bit about how you can get back into playing on the PSP yourself back in 2025. Back in 2025? It is 2025. In 2025. I'll see you there. So this is a relatively short section, because if you are interested in getting back into PSP, one of the things I always talk about in these videos is emulation. I won't talk a lot about emulation. I did a video last week on PSP emulation, so everything you ever wanted to know about PSP emulation but were afraid to ask is the name of the video, in fact. Go check out that video there. It will tell you all about how to get into the PPSSPP emulator and get yourself set up, and you can also do homebrew through that as well. So if you don't own a PSP and you want to go back and revisit some of that homebrew stuff, you can absolutely do that on there as well. So go check that out if you're interested in getting into PSP emulation. So, of course, that is one option. PSP emulation is one option. The other option, of course, is to go out and get yourself a PSP. And they are still relatively cheap. I say relatively cheap. You can pay anywhere from sort of £60 up to over £100 for PSP Go. They, as I mentioned before, fetch a fair amount. And it really does depend on the condition of the device. It doesn't really matter whether you pick up a 1000, 2000 or 3000. The earlier 1000s I think is probably slightly cheaper. Yeah, you can go and find them. They're pretty robust devices. And I say that, this was demonstrated when I was traveling the other week and I was charging this, and some oaf in the departure lounge at the Channel Tunnel basically didn't see that it was charged and walked straight across where the lead was, even though I was right in the corner, and pulled the device off and it smacked on the ground and the battery came out and I thought it was broken. I thought the screen went a bit weird, but actually it's been okay. So they are pretty robust, and even now, you know, even though they're old devices, can still take a bit of a battering. Not that I recommend that you do that. So that is the other way to get back into it. And of course, you can play there are a lot of PSP games that also appeared on other platforms. So things like Liberty City Stories, for instance, they did a PS2 version of this. So if you've got the access to PS2 or the early PS3, you can obviously have a go at Liberty City Stories or Vice City Stories on there. And that's the same for some games that were re-released on the Vita as well. So yeah, on the store you could quite often find some PSP games. Bit more difficult now that Sony don't really support either device anymore, but that is another option as well. So a couple of little options there. Obviously the easiest and quickest way to get back into it, if you've got the games but you don't have the console and you haven't got the money to go out and get one, or you're not interested in getting one, obviously go check out emulation, and that is a good way to go. When I got rid of my PSP, my first one, which I regret, and I still regret, even though I've still got another one now, I sold it, and I sold it for next to nothing. We were moving house and I thought I need to make a bit of money and I'm not really playing my PSP, so I sold it and I instantly regretted it. It was like an instant regret thing when that it closed on eBay, and at the time I must have sold it for about 30 quid, including all of the games as well, and I was absolutely mortified. And you know, like, a sale is a sale, and some of you say you could just backed out of it, and I was like, no, it's eBay, so that's that. And I sold it, but I did keep a few games back, and so emulation was the only real way for me to get back into that later on when I did it. And I'll tell you this much for nothing, there's no way I'm going to part with my PSP ever again, so that is a commitment from me. As long as I live, I will keep it, and as long as it's working, I will keep it. But yeah, I'll never make that mistake again. So there you go, that is a little bit about how you can get back into PSP gaming in 2025. So in the next section, I'm going to tell you whether I think it was worth it or not. I'll tell you all about how it's been to live with for the last month. So, what has it been like to live with the PSP for the last 4 weeks? You know the answer to this already, right? It's been fantastic. And I say this about a lot of consoles, and the reason why I say that about a lot of consoles is because it genuinely is really, really good fun to revisit consoles. And I haven't really encountered a bad one. There hasn't been a time where I've really looked at a console and gone, do you know what, that actually just isn't as good anymore. And I don't think there will be. Now I know that's not particularly helpful for a review, for every time I come back and just go, hey, it's been amazing. But it's different shades of amazing, right? Some consoles are just fantastic to go back and revisit, and some are exceptional. And the PSP definitely falls into that latter category of exceptional. It is such a great device, and it really holds up well. And some people actually thought at the time, maybe Sony have been a little bit too ambitious with this. Maybe it's a bit ahead of its time. There's a reason for that. It is absolutely fantastic. The PSP really holds up in 2025. If you go back and play the emulation, and the emulator will scale up some of the games as well, they look fantastic. It is, I think, probably better than the PS2. It's a little bit later, but for such a small device, it does an amazing job at playing, you know, home console level games on that small screen. It was the best screen out there at the time. It was the best from graphics point of view. Amazing sound. It's very sleek, very, very sleek and stylish as a unit as well. So all in all, really, it is a fantastic device, and I think it really still holds up. The games are fantastic, and that's part of the reason for the success of the PSP, and I think probably also the reason why the Vita didn't do so well, because it just didn't have the titles. You know, it was a little bit gimmicky with, you know, the sort of touch screen and the back touch screen and all that kind of stuff as well. You know, so you had some sort of interesting games that made use of that, but ultimately I think it was a little bit gimmicky, and Sony just didn't market it properly, and they just didn't have the catalogue of games and support that the PSP had, and so it just wasn't as successful. So yes, I have absolutely loved playing with the PSP again. I loved it in the day. Back in the day, I used to play it all the time. I was always playing on the PSP. You know, I had a PS2 and a GameCube in the living room at the time. Well, actually, no, I didn't have a GameCube because I traded it in. But I had a PS2. I've still got my original PS2. And then not so long after, I had the PS3 as well. And yeah, I still played on the PSP all the time. Really, really enjoyed it. So it has been fantastic to revisit it. And there are some fantastic games that you can play on it as well. Are just really, really enjoyable. The Grand Theft Auto games on their own are fantastic. Lumines, as I mentioned before, absolutely fantastic. There's just so many good games. So a great little device, and they are just so robust and so sleek and stylish, and they just haven't aged. I think they're just as good today as they were all those years ago. I mean, you do notice a few differences. I mean, ultimately, you know, you look at this. This has got a smaller screen than my mobile phone now. My mobile phone has a much bigger screen than this, but it doesn't matter, actually. It is just, for me, this was real peak handheld gaming, and I absolutely love it. So yeah, all right, I'll stop gushing about that now. Let's talk a little bit about what's coming up next, and I'll be revealing to you what is coming up next month. So there you go, that is August done, and that is the PSP a month with done, and that is summer done. Where did that go? And we are now into September, so it is another month with, and I will be revealing what that month with is in just a second. I'll give you one more clue. It's not a console, and it is celebrating an anniversary this year. Slightly unusual. It is an operating system. You should have worked it out by now, and your hearts are all sinking because you're like, an operating system, how boring. But of course it is Windows 95. So I am going to be taking a look at Windows 95, which is 30 years old last month, and yeah, it was a defining moment in PC gaming. And ultimately, that's really what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about PC gaming around the mid-90s era through Windows 95. So some of the games will be DOS games that happened to be out when Windows 95 was out. Some of those I'll be having another look at, and some of them will be Windows games, and we'll be having a look at those as well. I'll also tell you how to get yourself set up with Windows 95 on your PC or your Mac in 2025. It's really not that hard to do, so I'm going to step you through doing that as well if you're interested in going back and having a look and listening to that wonderful startup sound once again. There it is. And yeah, ultimately that is going to be it. So coming up on the channel, we've got the London Racer coming up, and obviously all of those Windows 95 things I spoke about, that how to, but also some game reviews, and then obviously at the end of the month we'll come back and I'll tell you what it's been like to live with Windows 95 for a whole month again. That's going to be weird because I have mixed emotions about Windows 95, I can tell you that much for nothing. So there you go, all that coming up in the channel. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video, hopefully you found that useful, and hopefully you're going to go and check out the PSP once again. If you're not thinking about doing it, definitely think about doing it and go do it. It is a fantastic little device. But yeah, that probably is it for today. So if you enjoy these videos, please do hit that like and subscribe button. Just reached the 600 milestone for subscribers, so thank you so much for those people that have subscribed to the channel and come back and watch more of my videos. I really do appreciate it. It really does make it worthwhile. Every time I get to one of these milestones, it is just such a huge deal for me and this little channel of mine. So thank you so much for your support, and keep it coming. Thank you so much. So yes, that's it then, really, isn't it? I will see you, well, I won't see you on Mondays 1 minute short because I don't really see you for those, but I will see you for next week's The Bit Between. I haven't decided what I'm doing yet, so yeah, keep tuned. Obviously go back and check my Destruction Derby one out if you're interested in that from Wednesday. But yes, that's it for today then. So please do all take care of yourselves. I'll see you around. Bye for now.